Good news, everyone. Talking Futurama is coming back for Talking Futurama Season 2, Part 2.
Fresher than a summer ham, this podcast comes every Friday. And if you sign up at the $5 level at patreon.com/TalkingSimpsons, you can hear each episode as it goes live.
That's right. Sign up today at patreon.com/TalkingSimpsons for $5 to hear Talking Futurama every Friday throughout the rest of 2020 and also all the previous episodes we've done so far.
So head over to patreon.com/TalkingSimpsons now, or we're going to clamp you.
Shut up and take my money.
Cartoons from present and the past. Every week will be an animated bash. What a cartoon! What a cartoon! Maybe a short but mostly shows. We'll talk, we'll analyze, exploring as we go. What a cartoon! What a cartoon! What a cartoon!
Hello, everybody, and welcome to What a Cartoon, where it never hurts to help. I'm one of your hosts, Wally, the bagpipe-playing weasel superfan, Bob Mackey, and this is an audio exploration of every cartoon ever. Who is here with me today?
Hey, I'm Henry Gilbert, and I don't want to be just some simple games press reporter. I'm going to risk it all and become a podcaster.
And today's episode is the Eek the Cat episode, Great Balls of Fur.
Me? Help the king? Sure, it never hurts to help.
Excellent. And yes, we are digging into the world of Fox Kids, those edgy Saturday morning cartoons that are just making ABC look like your grandma's programming.
Yeah, Eek the Cat, it was a big part of it back then, but now I think it's pretty much forgotten, or too forgotten, because, partially you can't watch it anywhere, and there was never more of it after they did 5 years of it. So
yeah, not to get too ahead of the history here, but it surprised me how much Eek the Cat there actually is in the world.
Me too, because I think I stopped paying attention when I looked at the list of episodes for the last 2 seasons of it. I thought, I don't think I watched this. I think I only watched the first 3 years of it.
And we should point out, owned by Disney currently.
Yeah, which is also like, then just put it on a thing, like just put it somewhere. Why not have it on Disney Plus or Hulu if you think it's too dirty? But, well, this was also an easy pick because some months ago at the time you're listening to this, but very recently at the time we're recording this, we interviewed co-creator of the show and voice of Eek, Bill Kopp, and we mainly focused on his Simpsons work as he worked on the first year of The Simpsons on the shorts, but we could not talk about Eek.
Yeah, such a nice guy, and what a fun interview that was.
Yeah,
especially when he just would launch into the Eek voice when I brought it up. Like, I can't not imagine Eek on the line, and he just launched into Eek.
I know.
And then it made me think, like, I don't think they're pitching you up that much for Eek.
No, I always thought they pitched him up a lot, but then when I heard him go into the voice, I was like, no, that's just same with the Melvis voice he does in this that he just did for us on there too. Like that's also why it had to be this episode, because it was the one I remember the best. It may not be the best episode of Eek, but there's just the Elvis joke, the Elvis movie joke in the middle of this makes me laugh so hard. And yeah, when I was a kid, I definitely watched it because it was on the same morning block as Batman, X-Men, and Spider-Man. So I was going to watch the stuff around it. Unless it was Tom and Jerry Kids. After like 2 episodes of that, I was like, no, thank you. But Eek was definitely a regular one for me, and my younger brother liked it even more too. Like we definitely had up at least 1 or 2 of those like freebie promotional posters for like advertising a new season of Fox Kids, and we're like, wow, there's Eek right there. I wish we had more Eek merch.
I definitely was on the Eek train because we were born at the perfect time in history. We grew up through the rise of Fox Kids, and like 92, 93 was one of their biggest expansion years, not to get too into the history here. And this was one of the big new shows, and obviously a lot of the Ren and Stimpy energy. This is a very cruel cartoon with lots of screaming and violence and jokes against people who are different than us. Yeah, that's why I liked it, because even as a kid I was like, ooh, this is edgy. There's some adult vibes going on here on Saturday morning. And I watched quite a few of these in prep for the show, and I will say I think it does work better as shorter episodes paired with Thunder Lizards. But this one is very very funny.
Yeah, an 11-minute format is better for Eek, I think, in the sped up ones. Even I watched a few as well, and even the ones where it's just 2 Eek episodes, I was like, no, this is the right speed.
Yeah.
Like, especially because most episodes are like an extended parody of some movie, you know?
That's true. If I can recommend one other one outside of this, I would recommend Eek Goes to the Hotspot. And in that like 7-minute cartoon, Eek is accidentally sent to hell after he dies.
Oh, wow.
And
I didn't see that one.
He is too nice to exist in hell, so he drives Satan insane. I mean, I feel like every cartoon in the 90s sent their main character or characters to hell. There was always an episode like that, like Ren and Stimpy, Rocko's Modern Life.
That happened a lot in those
and
early ones.
Cow and Chicken, Satan was just a character running around.
Yeah, Mr. No Pants, or
the red guy, I think his name was.
Yeah, and then he'd always have like a made up name that was about how his cheeks were hanging out all the time. No, I watched 2 pretty good ones in the 22-minute format that I really enjoyed from the first season. I watched the Accidental Tourist, which is about the family goes on a road trip across America, and then I watched the Christmas special, It's a Wonderful 9 Lives, which actually is not a Wonderful Life parody, but it's just Eek travels across America to deliver a present, and it's just him being like tortured for 22 minutes, but eventually he has a happy ending on Christmas Day.
And I also stand by Thunder Lizards. It's a fun like send up of the Ninja Turtle style cartoons, and I like that they have guns that shoot bees, and I wonder if they made action figures. I bet they didn't, but now I want them.
It felt like it was both a parody of action figure stuff, but also could be an action figure. Like all the Thunder Lizards had specific like vehicles, and they all looked like they were made for them. But I don't know if it was just them mocking them.
I just like seeing Curtis Booger Armstrong get work.
Yeah,
he's great.
He's a longtime pal of Savage Steve Holland. I think I do wish Sharky was in this episode. Like that is a major part of the series. Like there's another great one I watched was Sharky is damaged by a lawnmower accident with Eek, and then he has to like be retrained. They get a joke in there about fixing Sharky, and so like Elmo the elk comes in with a drill, and he's like, I'm just kidding, I was doing some construction work.
And lots of Canada bashing, which I also like.
Oh yeah, so much Canada
not to interrupt
bashing.
things too much, but I did see that in 1995 Hardee's had terrible Thunder Lizards like fun meal toys. So I'm going to be sad enough to buy those very soon.
Good old I love Hardee's. You say Hardee's, it makes me think of my favorite of the greasy breakfast
There was
foods.
one like 2 blocks from my house, so I grew up eating a lot of Hardee's.
Yeah, none of that Carl's Jr. for me. It's Hardee's with all their greasy ass biscuits. I have to say, as somebody who's trying to stay good on a diet, watching Melvis eat garbage this entire thing, I was like, man, I wish I remember when I used to gargle with M&Ms. I miss that. But yeah, the show holds up much better than I remember. I think it has like moments of brilliance, and the only thing that like really frustrates me watching it, other than things that obviously haven't aged perfectly in 28 years, but also the fact that like you can tell, budget or time prevented this joke from landing as great as it could have.
Yeah, if they had the amount of control over something like Ren and Stimpy or Rocko's Modern Life had, I feel like this could be a better show. But at times you can tell, like, this is a drawing someone did and sat down. Like, here's a fun expression, here's a fun bit of animation. A lot of it is like, here are people overseas using model sheets and looking at storyboards.
Yeah,
because things are just functional for a lot of the show.
It's mostly functional, but that's like, they got the time frame of network. You gotta Ren and Stimpy could tell Nickelodeon, hey, we need 3 more months, and they just be handed it.
You're getting 8 episodes this year.
But Eek the Cat, they gotta deliver 13 episodes. And
it helps that Ren and Stimpy had like rough draft.
Yes, yeah,
on their side.
It's really too bad they didn't. This opening looks rough drafty to me. I gotta say, but or at least better quality than the rest of it.
I wish the show looked like the opening. It feels like that is what they were going for. Definitely,
totally, yeah.
This kind of fluid animation. If you look at Bill Kopp's older stuff too, you can see what's informing it.
Oh yeah, I mean, there's bits in that opening that I'm like, I think Bill Kopp just did the full animation on this, or at the very least, like the posing. But who is this Bill Kopp and Savage Steve Holland that we're talking about? Well, they are the 2 co-creators of Eek the Cat, and they are both, I think, overlooked when people talk about 90s animation and late 80s animation in the U.S., because I think they're both very influential on the entire genre of animation.
Yeah, they both created so many shows.
Yeah, far more than I thought until I saw that list. I was like, oh wow, geez, yeah. And
Sadly, almost all unavailable.
what the hell is with that?
Yeah, Disney can't put Schnookums and Meat on Disney Plus. It was in the Disney afternoon, for Christ's sake.
Yeah, it really seems like bonkers. No, they have Quack Pack.
Yeah.
Maybe it's Schnookums and Meat is too close to Marsupilami, but it's like, I know they don't own the character Marsupilami, but I feel pretty certain they own Schnookums and Meat entirely. But
They have to.
But yeah, so Savage Steve Holland and Bill Kopp, born respectively in 1958 and 1962. So, Gen X boys, well, I guess Steve Holland, he's an old baby boomer, and no, he's a young baby boomer, and Bill Kopp is an old Gen Xer, perhaps.
Bill Kopp's a Gen Xer like we're millennials,
Yes,
basically.
yeah. and they were part of this new generation of animators who grew up loving the cartoons of, not just the Hanna-Barbera stuff that was on TV, but also they were the generation who looked to the Termite Terrace guys and the 9 Old Men at Disney, but I'd say for Kopp and Holland much more the Warner stuff. They looked at them and like, holy crap, I want to make that. Like, these guys were the greatest artists of their generation, and they're not celebrated enough. Why is Tex Avery just walking around anonymously?
And working on Quickie Koala.
Oh God! And then he was lucky to get that. Like, that was like a favor from Hanna-Barbera.
They just wanted to give him health insurance, this poor old man.
And so, Holland and Kopp, they were part of a generation of animators that would define the next 30, 40 years of animation, joining Cal Arts in the late 70s and early 80s. Holland, an upperclassman of Kopp at Cal Arts, and it was Holland who convinced Bill Kopp to leave the fine arts field at Cal Arts and join the animation field. And so as also Holland was working in live action as well as animation. And Kopp, for a guy who didn't plan on being in animation, he took to it very well. Like, he had 2 student films that won like the Student Academy Awards, or the Academy Award for Student Animation. And I mean, that 2 years in a row, I think that's kind of unprecedented.
It is very adorable how on our interview with Bill, he calls Steve Holland Savage.
Yeah.
It's like, oh yeah, I was hanging out with Savage, and that's where I met Savage.
That's so great that's what his friends call him instead of...
I'll tell you what, that was a smart branding move, because as a kid, I knew who he was because nobody else is known by the name Savage Steve.
Right? Yeah.
He's like a wrestler. It's like, did a wrestler direct Better Off Dead? What's happening?
It's how I remember it every time. Like, oh, Savage Steve, oh, this is a Savage one. Nice. Yeah. And if you watch those original Kopp short subjects, you see this, wild and chaotic energy in it, and just these like a lot of like shifting shapes into faces and crazy drawings. But also, he still like knew how to draw entertaining stuff. It wasn't, on the Courage the Cowardly Dog one, we talked about Dilworth, the creator of that, student films, and those felt almost too like artsy fartsy. And I feel like Kopp found a better way to be chaotically artistic while also not seeming too full of himself in his animation. After leaving Cal Arts, Steve Holland actually went into live action movies and produced the John Cusack starring film Better Off Dead, which was about it was a funny teen romance about a young cartoonist who is suicidal after a breakup from his girlfriend.
It's one of the few movie titles that has an ellipses, so I think technically you're supposed to say it Better Off Dead.
Oh, right. Okay, Better Off.
Well, no one ever does that, but I just enjoy how I think that and Say Anything are the 2 movie titles that I know with ellipses.
I watched that movie a long time ago. It's a funny, interesting movie because John Cusack's always great and stuff, and it's weird to see like the story of like, oh, there's jokes about him trying to commit suicide that would have seemed normal in cartoons, but it does feel a little different, much darker in live action to see, say, John Cusack fail to suffocate himself with a car in the garage.
And I think it's one of those movies that and the sequel, which came the next year, just got endless play on HBO, so I saw it a lot because it was so cartoony and it had cartoons in it. Yeah,
and this was where they cast future Eek the Cat, or I guess Terrible Thunder Lizard's voice actor, Curtis Armstrong, who I'll forever be Booger. People just see him, and I had to Google his name because I don't remember it. I just know him as Booger from Revenge of the Nerds. awards. But in that film, Better Off Dead, because the character was a cartoonist, there's also some really messed up animation in there, and that's where Bill Kopp came into play, animating with Holland. And also one of his early jobs with Holland was doing some very early digital animation on the Press Your Luck game show for all of the whammies.
Those delicious whammies.
Yeah, that was funny in an interview where he's like, I don't get why I worked on that for an afternoon. It just looks like crap to me. Like,
it's funny. I went back to so Better Off Dead is like wildly unavailable as of this recording on Election Day 2020.
Yes, yeah.
By the way, so we're getting through the day by doing podcasts. You guys in the future, don't spoil what happens. But I watched like the first 15 minutes, and it's amazing like how much I remember. Like, oh yeah, the paperboy breaking all the windows, the mom boiled the bacon, the Asian guys who sound like Howard Cosell, who won a drag race, John Cusack.
Wow,
just so many iconic things in the first 15 minutes, and I forgot. Oh yeah, the movie's about skiing.
Right, yeah. And then Booger tries to snort the snow on the ski slope because he thinks it's cocaine. Man, it's all coming back to me. The fast food place where he worked at and had that stop motion dream, that terrified me as a kid.
It was a regular large Marge.
Though even more so, the opening to One Crazy Summer, the next year's John Cusack Savage Steve Holland film, that one, the rhino like murdering all of the buddies with a machine gun, like holy crap.
It's in with Better Off Dead, it opens with this just crazy typical of the 80s like animated opening sequence, but done with like the crazy Bill Kopp style, but there's no like, it's not part of a framing device. In One Crazy Summer, at least, it pulls out and it's like, John Cusack is drawing this, by the way.
That it's all happening at the same time, and you can just go like, no, I shouldn't be drawing that. Like, yeah, you went through 9 months of animation production and then went like, wait, why am I drawing that? But yeah, I mean, as a child, to see that a cartoon could have those things, it did mess me up in a great way.
Yeah, seeing the bunnies get blown away like semi-realistically was shocking, but I couldn't look away.
And also, I think that was the first movie I saw Bobcat Goldthwait in, unless I saw Police Academy before that. Maybe I did, but yeah, One Crazy Summer. That one also had Kopp doing animation for on Holland's film, and it's also where he first worked with, I believe, professionally anyway, animator David Silverman, another young animator just getting his start in the world. And so after working on One Crazy Summer, 1987 rolls around. They've got a pal, Wesley Archer, who has been hired out of the Klasky Chupo Studios to animate interstitials for the Tracy Ullman Show. And he calls up Bill Kopp. Bill Kopp brings along David Silverman, and they are the only animators for the first set of Simpsons shorts. And the interview goes into this way more in detail, but short version is they were each handed like they had to do 30 seconds of animation kind of a week, and it just seems like hell, like, honestly.
And now that we all of the guys who worked on the original shorts, their styles are so distinct, you can see like the shorts jumping between different drawings from different creators. Like you get the Wes Archer Twister Mouth, the David Silverman crazy like wild takes, and the Bill Kopp like very just extremely strange looking characters.
Yeah, it's part of that magical mysterious chemistry of it all working together that you have, Silverman and Archer's energy, and then on top of that, Kopp's but a lot of what Kopp brought to the original ones, including like he's credited as defining Marge's look with her giant bouffant hair. That's apparently Kopp's biggest contribution. But like the animation for him in those early ones, it's just his usual like cartoony violent stuff. Like when Maggie falls down the stairs and then squishes and then gets up and is happy and laughing, or when Maggie is poisoned by hot sauce and likes it. That all that feels very Kopp to me. It also Kopp animated the deleted scene of Maggie sticking the fork in the electrical socket
and liking it.
She loved it. Yeah, it's so Kopp worked on it for about a year. Defines working on Simpsons as a very learning experience. All while Holland is working on a movie, but also in 1987, Holland sells Fox a TV show, one of Fox's earliest shows, The New Adventures of Beans Baxter.
Oh shit. Okay, I forgot that was his. That's actually what I think Tom Gamble and Max Pross worked on instead of The Simpsons.
Oh, right.
They're like, we're going to Beans Baxter. Or maybe it was that show with Tobey Maguire. I forget. But
yeah, the Beans Baxter show, it definitely is when Holland made his first connection with the Fox network. And it's a perfect mashup because, Holland made these underrated films that but definitely spoke to the young people, and here is Fox wanting young, hip, sexy programming from a young guy who has some success in Hollywood but isn't too big to say no to the Fox network. And so just as The Simpsons is starting to take off, Kopp was tapped to join a set of newer animators at Disney to work on the Roger Rabbit shorts, because 1988, a wild year for animation. You have Roger Rabbit coming out and popularizing classic cartoons in a way that had not been done before. And then on top of that, you had The Simpsons really starting to take off, and you could feel this kind of turn coming. I think plus the Beanie and Cecil show, it was definitely the Mighty Mouse Bakshi cartoon was happening by 88. So Kopp was one of many animators tapped to join the Roger Rabbit shorts, which had they were big budget actual theatrical shorts. It was, I think they really thought they were ringing in a new age of theatrical shorts being a normal, regular thing again. And it's really sad that it fell apart because I think it was working as intended. The shorts they made, they got kids to go to see Dick Tracy.
And that's why Honey, I Shrunk the Kids was a big hit too.
Yeah, we all went to see them, and it's just, why didn't that keep happening? It's a very tragic thing.
I mean, for our listeners, the story is that there was an internal executive battle, and Spielberg wanted a short on arachnophobia. Eisner wanted a short on Dick Tracy. Eisner went over to Spielberg's head, and that's when Spielberg's like, "All right, I'm not going to approve any more Roger Rabbit stuff. It's all got to go through me. I'm not even going to look at it." Yep. So, and this is when they're deciding to build Toontown, and everything is happening. So that's what killed Roger Rabbit.
Yeah, and that's when Spielberg headed over to Warner and started. And I mean, he wasn't doing all that much with Disney anyway, but Eisner, all that sacrificed for Dick Tracy, which wasn't going to succeed anyway.
No.
And plus, what, you're betting on Warren Beatty over Spielberg? That's the old Hollywood, buddy. And Spielberg was the current Hollywood. But yeah, it's really sad because those two Roger Rabbit shorts that got finished, Tummy Trouble and Roller Coaster Rabbit, that he did, Kopp worked on, they're both great. They're really great. And you look at the credits, you're like, oh, there's Rob Minkoff and X, Y, and Z. All these future major people worked on
They look so expensive.
Yeah, I have a feeling that's why once Spielberg was out of there, Kopp talked about how he thought of sticking around with Disney, but the shorts they were getting handed were written by writers. They were, screenwriters, not animation people, but just movie guys who write a script and don't think about what is being drawn, and which I think especially for a short that is all about visual gags, you don't write a script for that.
That feels like a Katzenberg initiative, not to be a Katzenberg basher, but we saw what he did with Aladdin. He's just we're bringing in writers to fix this, you animation dorks.
And then they had to fit, every time it's the animators do a good job the first time. They're like, well, you guys did fine for animation guys, but now it's time to get the professionals in here, that, as happened on the Scooby-Doo movies. We talked about those too. All the folks who worked on it say they got worse because Warner insisted on hiring real writers to do it and not the cartoon guys. So Kopp leaves Disney, starts a writing job on Tasmania, so he's already in the Fox Saturday morning, atmosphere. Then, 1991, in the shadow of Ren and Stimpy and The Simpsons revitalizing TV animation, Kopp reconnects with Savage Steve Holland professionally, and they conceived of a silly, violent, colorful cartoon animal series, in part influenced by the pair's love of cats with bad luck in their lives. And Kopp tells us a story about the voice he'd make up for the cat he knew, and just I love it. This friendly, put upon, constantly taking advantage of indefatigable young cat. And he didn't mention it in our interview, but I saw one other interview where Kopp says it's partially based on Holland had this poor little kitty who got like picked up by a hawk and just vanished one day, and he was like, just imagining that happening to Eek. Like that's just one of the many maladies that happens to Eek.
You know
all
what?
The time.
It happened like I don't know, almost a decade before this character, but I get a real Butters energy from Eek.
Yes, yeah. These, there's different names for these types of guys now, but back then, like Melvin would fit for these type of guys, or people. It's not just it is a very male energy for Eek, I think. Like he's very like the 70s and 80s, sensitive man, self-actualized, self-help. He uses self-help jargon all the time.
And kumbaya. Kumbaya.
Yeah, it's like
it never hurts to help.
Yeah. And it is just everyone taking advantage of him at all times. And he's such a funny, colorful character.
I like that in this episode they work in all of his catchphrases, including what he says when someone calls his girlfriend fat.
I love that.
Really?
Yeah. Really?
Yeah.
It's I love the way of saying really.
Really?
And then he has a girlfriend named Annabelle, a giant pink cat. Like the bold colors, they almost hurt your eyes, but I like the choice.
It is pure 90s like color design. Just like how can we get kids to stop changing the channel?
Exactly. Yeah.
Purples, pinks, the sickest greens you've seen in your life.
It's the same thing with the Tiny Toons, and I also think Eek the Cat, it was a place for them to like grind their axes against the bad cartoons of the 80s, specifically with the characters of the Squishy Bears, and also that they make the kids just pig-nosed, ugly, and mean. Like they're just like those fucking kids at the start of One Crazy Summer who get their faces stuck that way.
You're right.
And yeah, they pitch the show about this little put-upon cat who goes on adventures. It is a real kind of like old school cartoon setup too. Like every episode is just a new Eek adventure of him going through life, but instead of being like a self-driven kind of guy or a frustrated, angry guy like Donald Duck, perhaps, he instead is just rolls with the punches. Every horrible thing that happens to him, he goes like, well, okay, I'll just persevere. It's fine. And so Bill Kopp in our interview also credited Fox executive Margaret Leish. I've been mispronouncing it this whole time. He said Leish. So
Leish,
like,
okay.
But he really credits her for giving them a lot of creative freedom, something that most executives did not give them elsewhere. I've been thinking about this a lot, actually. We talked about Leish, we talked about Linda Saminsky, we've talked about the Nickelodeon Vanessa Coffey. All these women, like every time I read about them, every animator who worked with them in the 90s is like, oh yeah, they let us do the good stuff. They were the best executives I worked with. Like 90s women executives, sounds like they were the only good ones to work with.
It feels
America.
like they were also like, we'll let you be in charge of cartoons because you're a woman.
Yeah.
You're not going to get a real executive job. And then they have all of this like amazing power and like greenlight all this cool stuff.
But on the stuff no man cared about back then. Now it's just so much more controlled. Like even though this show definitely had some problems with censors, and the Fox network didn't like some violent jokes they had. But the series would be ordered for 13 episodes to air in the 1992 fall season. But who would be the production company? Well, I don't think we've talked about him that much on here, except I think in our Clone High podcast, I think we did. But Nelvana, the Toronto-based animation studio.
Yeah, and I can just see that logo of the polar bear in my head right now.
I love that shooting star over the polar bear. It's great. Yeah,
they had like a Deke style like rise to power and reign over kids TV.
When I looked up their production history, they worked on some stuff with Deke in the middle of the 80s that I was like, oh, this is why I think of it, because I do think of the stupid Deke window and then the Nelvana bear right after that. But yeah, the Nelvana, based in Toronto, Ontario, Canada. They've been around since 1971, started by a small handful of animators, in part influenced by the Yellow Submarine, and they loved comic books and rock and roll. And so they worked on a bunch of Canada-only cartoons and live-action productions, and they got their big break, though, in 1978, which was they animated the only good part of the Star Wars Holiday Special.
It's really cool.
the introduction of Boba Fett short, which is like, maybe I think it's the only time there's animation where Han Solo, Luke, and Leia are played by their actors. Like, they recorded new stuff for it.
I love how weird and psychedelic the animation is. You can smell the spilled bong water when that thing starts playing.
It's I know a lot of younger people than us love Boba Fett because they were heavily advertised too with an action figure, but it's also this cartoon. People would always tell me, like, yes, the holiday special's bad, except for that Boba Fett short. It's so great. Like, Boba Fett's the coolest.
I was surprised that neither Kopp or Holland are Canadian, because there's a lot of Canada jokes on the show.
Yes.
Like, the most that I remember on a kid's show from when I was growing up. And one of my favorite jokes is just a one-off character. They were doing like a superhero parody, and one of the superheroes was Canada Man, and his logo was an A and a question mark, like A? And he had maple leaf throwing stars. And I want to be that for Halloween and just hand out pamphlets explaining who I am.
This episode has it. There's anytime Elmo the Elk shows up, I feel that is a bunch of Canada jokes too. It's my guess is, and maybe in Bill Kopp Part 2 we can ask. I have a feeling it was that when they after visiting Nelvana's studios in Toronto or working out of it, they were just like, God, we're just surrounded by these Canucks at all times. Like, we got to joke about it to get some of our frustrations out of having to be around all these smiling, friendly Canadians. Nelvana's work on the holiday special would lead to a long-term relationship with George Lucas, because in the mid-'80s, they would be the animation studio for both the Ewoks and the Droids animated series.
Sure.
Look, I won't vouch for the Ewoks one. The Droids one, if you compare it to other shows in 1986, is a good show.
It had a cool opening song.
Oh, yeah. George Lucas spent real money on that opening song.
Stuart Copeland?
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
I'm softly in the danger zone. Sorry. Okay. In the 80s, also, Nelvana worked on a lot of other licensed animation stuff, sometimes partnered with Deke. They did animation on the first season of Heathcliff with Deke and the first season of Inspector Gadget. Then they were like the Care Bears factory.
Oh, you're right about that. Yeah.
They did not only the Care Bears like TV specials and animated films, but also all the TV episodes of it for a time too.
God, those god-awful Care Bears movies that were kicking Disney's ass in the 80s.
Yeah, so sad. We talked about it on The Great Mouse Detective, right? That it lost to Care Bears the movie, which looks like shit compared to. I'm not. This isn't a diss on Nelvana, because like they were probably given the equivalent of 4 episodes of TV show budget to make a movie.
I somehow avoided Care Bears growing up. My sister was the Care Bear fan.
I lightly liked Care Bears, and I had a Tender Heart plushie, but when the cartoons aired, I mean, I'd watch them, but they were not appointment viewing for me. Like, honestly, like 2 other Nelvana productions, I rented the VHSs all the times for Mad Balls and My Pet Monsters. Like, I don't believe Mad Balls became a full series, but they did the 2 specials.
I feel like my favorite Nelvana thing that I can think of offhand is the Beetlejuice cartoon.
Yes.
And we'll definitely do an episode about that, because it's one of my favorite cartoons growing up.
Well, I mean, you've been in love with Lydia ever since.
It's true. It's very true. I've always been looking for her.
No, I love the Beetlejuice cartoon too. Yeah, and also there's that weird spate of Babar cartoons in the late 80s. That was them as well, which I felt like they were trying to make Babar a thing in America, and that was like the last time they could do it, because if you step into Babar's story even a little bit, you're like, well, this is just colonialism.
Yes, Babar's shocking colonialist history.
Yeah, it's kind of awful. You just have to leave Babar in the past.
Those are cute elephant drawings, though.
Oh, yes, yeah. So by the early 90s, Fox Kids was one of Nelvana's best partners on their brand new Fox channel. For the 1992 season, they were working with Nelvana on a ton of stuff, not just 13 episodes of Eek, which included one Christmas episode that aired in prime time as a holiday special, but also they worked with the Jim Henson Company on the Dog City show.
Oh, yeah. And speaking of Beetlejuice jumped ship to Fox from ABC. That's
right, man.
And they made a ton of them for Fox. And it was on like daily for Fox, too.
Yeah, they made like a 52 episode order or something with Fox. Yeah, it was too... Beetlejuice was too gross for ABC, but just perfect for Fox. And they also worked on for under Universal at the same time. They were doing the Fievel's American Stories show. Nobody remembers that. And the Family Dog show that came way too late. And the Tales from the Crypt Keeper animated show that was a partner with the Sonic show. So they were working on all these shows at the same time. It was probably Nelvana's like most busiest period, I guess. I don't know if it's the time they made the most money, but
oh man, now the mention of Dog City makes me think of that Everybody Knows It's on Fox.
Everybody knows it's on
Dog
Fox.
City, Beetlejuice, Merry Medley's X-Men 2.
Yeah, the Dog City show, I think it only happened because it was one of Jim Henson's last ideas. So they're like, we got to see this through. Jim Henson wanted this. And it was just as a memorial to Jim Henson, it happened.
Are you going to not greenlight a Ghost's idea?
and look, and I remember enjoying the Dog City show. It was fine.
I thought Dog City was like a puppet movie that became a cartoon series.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. It was all puppets in the special, but when it came time to make it a series, they just animated it. I think with most of the same voices. And so Eek the Cat has been greenlit. In addition to Kopp and Holland writing most of the first couple of years, the animation on the first season, the director was John Halfpenny. He is a Nelvana vet, fresh off of Beetlejuice, and I believe is seemingly retired, or at least a little bit. His last IMDb credit is on the first season of Angela Anaconda.
Okay.
And but based on his LinkedIn, he is still working on some smaller scale Canada only stuff. And Halfpenny's assistant director on the first season was Jamie Whitley, who'd go on to be the lead director of the next season. He's again another like Nelvana lifer who then moved over to a bunch of stuff I'd never heard of, other than Paw Patrol, which like that needs to be defunded. Defund Paw Patrol. So the voice cast. What a great voice cast this show has.
Yeah,
it's so good.
and not to keep saying we talked about it in the interview, but we did. This was not an era in which the creator of the cartoon voiced the main character. Like John Kay was the outlier because he just forced himself into that role after getting Billy West to audition as Ren. He's like, well, of course I'm Ren.
Yeah.
So having Bill Kopp as the main character was very unusual, but he's such a good voice actor.
He's so great. It's now very normal to have your co-creator voice a character and more than one character. And now that I know his voice and also Steve Holland's, I'm like, oh, I know I know when they're doing incidental people, like, oh, that cop or that fat guy is also them doing a silly voice. And also they had a lot of the best voice acting at the time. They had E.G. Elizabeth Daly as doing her most annoying kid voice she can.
Oh,
as the little girl.
It's like a whinier Tommy Pickles.
Oh, it's nails on a chalkboard, as she was asked to do, but I have a feeling that's why that character stops appearing in the middle of the series.
That hideous little girl.
And also Hideous is her brother, played by Charlie Adler, who also does a ton of other voices in the show. But I do love Charlie Adler's like the stupid kid. And Kopp loves working with him. I think he said that Charlie Adler's a voice in everything he's ever done. And then we got Leonardo himself, Cam Clark. He's also a real regular on the show. I was surprised by how deep the voice actors were in this. Like some big names, like Dan Castellaneta is a regular in the first couple seasons.
He's all over this, and I feel like he was testing what he could do because not getting paid a lot for The Simpsons. So he's like, I'll do other voice acting and I'll see what I'm worth.
And you know what? Nelvana, I believe they're the ones who did Earthworm Jim, right?
I think so,
He's the lead in that. And they also got like voice acting legend then and now, you know, the late Gary Owens. Like, God, just hearing Gary Owens' voice, just it's beautiful.
The original Space Ghost and also Patter Toastman and the announcer for Laugh-In, a show I was just confused by as like an 8-year-old.
From beautiful Burbank. And Annabelle, his girlfriend, is voiced by 80s rock sex symbol Tawny Katane. I did not know that.
Playing against type.
And then you've also got Brad Garrett, one of his earlier voice roles for Raymond's brother.
Back when he was a voice actor and not like one of the 8 kings of Las Vegas.
Yeah, God, he probably took a real hit from this whole virus thing. I mean, it's not his earliest work. Like he played Hulk Hogan in 1987.
That's right.
Cartoon, so he's pretty established at this point, but not the Brad Garrett. And as the mother on the show, the still living Eleanor Donahue, who was the mother on Father Knows Best.
Perfect
and
to
a million other things.
like a 50s mom on this psychotic 90s cartoon.
And she knows she's playing it exactly right too. Like I love that she's always trying to learn new languages. To a degree, maybe it's art foreign languages silly kind of jokes, but I like her learning useless phrases from over a Walkman. And the show had a ton of guest stars, far more than I remembered, like Mr. T, William Shatner, Buck Henry, Tim Curry, Phil Hartman, Weird Al, Fabio, Heather Locklear, and two that is a really funny story behind it, Gillian Anderson and David Duchovny from the X-Files, which it was totally I think it was the first time they guest appeared on anything, even before reboots. And it was because in a season 1 episode of X-Files, it's about creepy twins, and Eek the cat is being watched by one of the kids on TV. And the Eek guys were like, "Oh, that's so cool. We got to ask them to be on our show." So then in a 95 episode, they do an Alien Invader episode where they crash into the FBI, and then Scully runs towards Mulder after seeing the alien. She's like, "You're right, Mulder, you're right." Then as a payback the other way, in 1998, on an episode of Millennia, the other show from the creator of X-Files, the episode where Mulder and Scully appear is playing on TV in that episode.
That makes it like, was Eek the Cat a hit show that was very cool, like had like a cool edge like Ren and Stimpy, because it had 5 seasons and all these big stars. Like, was this show bigger than I thought it was?
I think it did all right, but honestly, I don't think it was the hugest hit. I think it could be just more Steve Holland had connections in Hollywood. I think it's more likely he called in a bunch of favors and stuff.
Okay.
Or just he networked better. Like Dee Snider wrote the theme song to Terrible Thunder Lizards as well. I also think they were just like into the LA metal scene and the hard rock scene.
Oh yeah, like the opening to this, like the blistering guitar, it rules, frankly.
Yeah, and that theme song was composed by Nathan Wang, who really got like this chaotic hard rock feel to so much of the soundtrack, which is, it really fits great with this like nervous little purple cat who's trying to be positive, but then just all around is like, it's great. And it fits perfect with the wild opening animation too. And Kopp and Holland have worked with Wang almost exclusively as the composer on their future projects. Like he's still to this day working on stuff, and his credits are all over the place on there. And Eek animation overseas was handled by the Taiwanese animation companies Wang and Hong Ying. I think they do fine for what was the standard at the time. It's not great. Occasionally you see something okay.
Yeah, I don't know like how much they were given. Like I said, a lot of this is functional. Like we're just gonna draw everything on model and things will just move as they normally would. But then there's like little touches where it feels like they were sent like unique pieces of animation to include. Like here's what this wild take should look like. Here's what this like deformation should look like. So it's up and down. It's up and down, this show.
Yeah. And then when the second season came around, it was partnered with another Holland and Kopp production, Terrible Thunder Lizards, which honestly, it's just 2 shows put together, and that's its own podcast almost. But I think as Kopp told us, it was like Holland wanting to diversify the series, and it turned Eek into more of a cartoon cavalcade of shows, like how Ren and Stimpy was too, that they'd occasionally have other tunes than just Ren and Stimpy in it.
It's a fun cartoon. I like Thunder Lizards. It's another podcast, but I like the premise that like dinosaurs and humans coexist, but dinosaurs find out humans will destroy the planet in 200 million years, so they have to kill them all.
And I love the 2 cavemen too. They're great, especially Charlie Adler's one, When Will the Hurting Stop?
And I was looking up what Eek toys were there, and there were very limited ones. So like for Thunder Lizards, I found Hardee's Happy Meal toys, and then for Eek there were Subway toys in '97.
Subway, that's even below. It goes like McDonald's, Burger King, Hardee's, and then if you're at Subway, it's like why even have?
I don't even think the bread classifies as bread anymore. It's like some sort of foam, hardened foam,
a scented foam.
Yes, but then there's an Eek the Cat Super Nintendo game,
yes.
and it has the best premise of any type of game in that the entire thing is an escort mission, just like the Rocco's Modern Life game. But at least the Rocco's Modern Life game looks good. You got to look up how wonky the Eek sprite looks in this game. Bad times all around.
Yeah, the Ren and Stimpy game at least had good sprites as well. Like that's I accept that if I'm playing a game based on a cartoon in the early 90s, it will probably be bad, but it needs to at least look like the characters. That's why I'm begging my mom to rent me one. And so, yes, when Terrible Thunder Lizards joined the show as a pair of 10-minute animated things, they then became Eekstravaganza was the name of the show then. No more just Eek the Cat. Also, if you watch the opening to Eekstravaganza, that's like Eek and the Thunder Lizards kind of crossing over with each other. The squishy bears run through, and I think that's because I read that their original plan was they'd be 10 minutes each, and then they'd have like a minute or two extra to shove in revolving things that would often feature the squishy bears. But apparently the episodes always came in long, so they're like, no, there's no time for any squishy bear stuff. And also during that second season is when Bill Kopp was offered a deal with Disney to create his own standalone show. And, you know, it's a difficult thing to be told, hey, go to Disney and make a Ren and Stimpy for them. But, I mean, you could definitely feel like in our interview he wanted it to make his own thing, like just to show I can create my own show. I don't just work with Savage Steve Holland. And so he created Schnookums and Meat, also its own podcast we should do. But the interesting thing, though, is that despite getting an exclusive deal with Disney, he could still keep doing voices on Eek the Cat and play Eek. And I gotta say, I think he probably did uncredited story stuff while doing the voice acting.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah.
I mean, obviously Disney could have like sued him into the ground if he officially did writing for it. But how could he not be like in the voice studio with Holland and say like, well, here's the lines. I have no notes on these. And
I'll just say them as written.
And it was during the third season, while Kopp was off of the show, that Holland teamed with another old buddy, David Silverman, to create a second partner series for Eek, Clutter, which also I think is its own podcast. But the funny story about it is that as Critics Season 2 ended prematurely, Phil Roman's like, we got a staff still around for a few months. Could you guys just make a show? And so if you watch Clutter, you not only get to see some very David Silverman-y drawings, and it's really great, but it also looks and moves and is animated by Rough Draft Korea. Looks exactly like the second season of Critic.
You're just like one of the 5 Critic character designers.
Yeah, and the same series director is the second season of Critic. And also like Silverman does voices in it. It's really, and Bill Kopp is a character in it, but not played by Bill Kopp. They just created a character called Kopp, who's drawn to look like a David Silverman style caricature of Bill Kopp. It's really cute. But and it only went 6 episodes. It seemed like a cooler idea. It unfortunately did not go much longer. Though the series would do 76 total episodes, 5 whole seasons, got its own NES game. But by the time fall of 1996 rolled around, you could tell that Fox Kids had changed quite a bit from the time Eek first premiered. Like Power Rangers changed the channel. Like they were bigger than ever. And Saban partially owned Eek as well, so it was
right.
Distributor on it.
I think in the last year of Eek, there was also that rancid live-action Ninja Turtle show.
Yes.
And fiance of the show, Nina Matsumoto, she could be wife of the show by now, who knows? But we watched an episode of that. It is the most Vancouver production ever.
Oh.
Like, I've been there.
Now I need to watch it with Vancouver eyes. And now that's, I mean, to hear from our Vancouver buddies about watching the X-Files and just knowing every location animation in it. And so, Eek had clearly run its course. Plus, it's like, what show goes over 76 episodes? Honestly, getting over 65, they should be proud of that. But they get, by the end of the last season, 7 of the shorts just are kind of dumped in the summer, which really shows you Fox is like, we're done with you, Eek. No more of this. And meanwhile, Kopp would, after his Disney work, one season on Schnookums and Meat, he'd return to Nelvana to help in the singularly animated episode of Tales from the Crypt, which the third pig, which is crazy violent too. And then he'd land a big deal with DreamWorks. He'd do a show called Toonsylvania, which was the first DreamWorks show like that.
Right.
Unfortunately, I believe he left on the second season, and the feel of Toonsylvania definitely seemed like Universal monsters in the Animaniacs and Tiny Toons mold. And from then he had to just bounce around from multiple high-profile gigs, sometimes working with some of his old buddies. On other times, like he directed like multiple of the Tom and Jerry movies in the mid-aughts. And in Savage Steve Holland too, he'd kind of jump between live action and animation, but still work a ton. Though I don't think the pair, I believe they're still buddies, but I don't believe the two have produced together since this series.
He's still on a first name basis with old Savage.
Yeah. I want to see them produce together. We'll see. And who knows, by the time you listen to this, a new Bill Kopp thing might have been announced.
Yeah, in late October, he's like, I can't tell you guys, but it's going to be big.
Yeah, look forward to it. So Eek the Cat would not get any new stuff from then on, though would live on in reruns with most Saban programming on the Fox Family Channel. And then when Disney bought Saban and the Fox Family Channel, which was that's a whole thing in the Disney War book, when Eisner buys the Fox Family Channel and gives Saban a bunch of money for it. His entire investor is like, this is the stupidest. Why'd you buy this channel? And they end up with owning all of this stuff that they didn't have a home for at the time, including Eek. Eek moves over to the Jetix block of programming.
Yeah, and if you watch Eek on YouTube, which is where you have to watch all of Eek the Cat, it'll have like the Jetix bug on there.
I appreciate those airing, at least letting us see it. But yeah, and that's where Eek the Cat would live in, ignominy until I think the end of the aughts was when he just left cable altogether.
Yeah, and I was reading like normally around this time you could totally be a ripoff artist and be like, all right, we're going to put out 8 VHS tapes, 2 episodes per tape, and that's it. I think Eek had like 1 VHS tape like in a different territory, and there was never anything outside of that.
That's crazy, right? Like the merchandising arm of Fox did not do enough with this. I mean, it could just be that like Fox kind of owned it, but Saban kind of owned it. Nelvana kind of owned it. So maybe they didn't have. It's different with like when the X-Men and Batman shows were starting. That was up to Warner or Marvel to make the deals with a toy company to sell the stuff. But Nelvana, I don't think, was as invested in that. Even though you look at Eek, that is a plush I need to hug.
I want that in my house. But yes, so I'm reading here. So there was 1 VHS tape released in America in 1995. And if you want it on DVD, you will need to watch the Czech Republic version of Eek, or the Hungarian version, or the Russian version.
Well,
so these like Eastern European versions of Eek, all available on DVD.
Something about Eek's suffering and love of Gen X Americana really spoke to those youngsters. That's great. Like, I'm glad it at least got some official DVDs somewhere, so archivists of Eek can at least get like quality footage. And maybe that's why like the version of this episode we watched on YouTube and multiple ones I watched, they were better than say when we did the Monkeys from Space show.
Oh yeah.
This was much better quality than those.
Or Mighty Max as well.
Mighty Max, yeah. And at least somebody got a DVD somewhere of this. And I don't understand why it's not on Disney Plus. Like, They bought Saban. They own it. Like, I don't know. Is there a deal with Nelvana? Did they not? I mean, I feel like Nelvana still exists, but they don't do a ton of stuff that's international. They're certainly not as big as they used to be. I feel like just write Nelvana a little check and get the streaming rights.
It could also be like, this is not like the image Disney wants. There is some like 90s style non-PC humor in these, which I don't see playing on their channel really.
Yeah, it's true. The old animation they have, it's usually ones that just buy into their biggest icons like Spider-Man. They have all the old Marvel well, not all of them, but they have some old Marvel cartoons on there. But they are kind of restricted with what they share. We should, again, as we always say, we should be thankful we even got bonkers. You know?
Every day I wake up and I thank the Lord for bonkers. It's all we have in this decaying world.
But that's all we know about Eek at this time, and there's tons more stuff I could talk about Bill Kopp and Steve Holland, but I'm sure we will cover those in the future. So that's the history of Eek. Why don't we take a quick little break? When we come back, it's time to head to Placeland and learn all about Elvis the cat.
We'll be right back.
Who's the cat hanging on Fox Kids? Who's the purple cat that's got the shark dog on the run?
My little purple cuddle muffin.
Who's the cat that's been in space more than the space shuttle?
Come here.
Right on. Check out the hippest cat and the coolest fossils around. It's a new Eek Monday on Fox Kids. Experience the extreme.
Monday on Fox Kids TV. Party! Extravaganza's the place to be. With humorous heroes whose hilarity will make you smile deliriously. Eek's all heart, shock is all bark, you know it's all true. You betcha. Action's eye-popping, silliness is skyrocking. Thunder lizards and clutter make you laugh till you're blue. Extravaganza's the place to be. All new Monday on Fox Kids TV.
Yeah, man!
Kumbaya! Welcome to the break, everybody. It's Henry Gilbert. Thanks for listening to this week's What a Cartoon.
Hey everybody, it's Bob Mackey, and I also think it never hurts to help.
And yes, we had so much fun talking about Eek the Cat this week. After we got to interview Bill Kopp last year, it just seemed natural, like, it's time to get into Eek after finally talking to the creator and voice of the character. And I hope you guys loved going back into this unfortunately overlooked classic 90s cartoon. And you know, me and Bob are only able to do this kind of esoteric diving into classic cartoons thanks to the support of listeners like you at patreon.com/Talking Simpsons.
Yeah, that's right. If you want to support the show and get all kinds of bonus stuff on top of that, please go to patreon.com/Talking Simpsons. Sign up there for $5 a month. You get all the shows 1 week ahead of time and ad-free, and also access to everything behind the $5 paywall. That includes everything we've done behind the paywall on Patreon for nearly 4 years. That is so many bonus episodes, including all of our limited miniseries. To date, those have been Talking Critic, Talking Futurama, Talking Mission Hill, and coming very, very, very soon, at the end of March of 2021, we will have 11 new episodes of Talk King of the Hill. We're going through Season 2, Part 1, so the first half of Season 2 of King of the Hill will be covering that in our typical Talking Simpsons / What a Cartoon style. And there's so many other things that I can't mention here, just too many to go over on a little ad like this, but we have a $10 level as well at patreon.com/Talking Simpsons. Sign up there. You get all the $5 stuff, of course, but also access to one make-along podcast once a month, only for patrons of that level or higher. And what is that, Henry?
You're talking about the What a Cartoon movie podcast. If you enjoy this one, but would like it to be twice as long and going in depth about animated feature films, then sign up at the $10 level to hear it all at over 2 years of What a Cartoon movies will be at your fingertips. You get to hear a preview in our feed each month, but you can only hear the full thing if you're a $10 and up subscriber at patreon.com/Talking Simpsons. Recent ones have included the Ghibli film Whisper of the Heart. We had so much fun with that. If you want to hear more 90s animation thoughts, I bet you'll really love our one on the DuckTales film. And previous ones have included a diverse collection of cartoons like Beavis and Butthead Do America, Akira, Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, and many, 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 many more. Sign up today at the premium level to hear it all at patreon.com/Talking Simpsons.
And if you've never been on Patreon before, it is so easy to sign up, and once you do sign up, you're given access to a code. You can access that code at any time. You just drop that into whatever you use to listen to podcasts, and that way you can download all of our bonus podcasts alongside all of your free podcasts and your podcasting lifestyle. And Patreon also has an app that you can use on any smart device, and using that app, you can access all of our bonus content too. But either way you do it, it is so easy to access all the bonus content waiting for you at patreon.com/TalkingSimpsons.
So thank you again for listening, and now let's bask in the beauty of Elvis in this Eek the Cat classic.
Now back to our show.
Phew.
Okay, we're back, and boy, that opening to Eek the Cat, the great song, and just it's just a short film on its own of like that really fits with. It feels like that Rhino cartoon and just all the other like fantasy cartoons that then turn into crazy violence that Holland and Kopp did in their animated films.
The difference is that Eek can't bleed,
Yeah,
or lose like body parts.
They get as close as they can in the credits. That thing of Eek's head exploding in the space suit, I couldn't believe they even that one that they got to animate it and then even air it in the credits.
I think they had to save it for the ending credits and put it in a smaller window.
Definitely they couldn't put it on the show itself, but yeah, I mean the opening of him dreaming that he's a Superman, I think that really sets the tone for that's how Eek sees himself. He's like, I'm a superhero, saves everybody. Like, no, you're a doormat who everyone takes advantage of. That's all your life is, and that it leads to just pain. Like, there's some real great like Sakuga in there of like just amazing animation of how Eek trying to blow out the wick on the bomb is so good. Yeah.
And just how he lands on his logo.
A
crumpled mess.
And just the constantly cycling animation that you can use of him falling like head over foot, and the way it just his tail kind of wraps around himself. It's all so great, and a lie for what the show itself will look like. I can't really tell who boarded this one because unfortunately this is from the era when credits were uniform for a season, so it just lists a dozen storyboard artists and you don't know who did which one.
And it's not one of those shows that puts it on like the title card or whatever.
Yeah, you do know that every episode is written by Kopp and Holland in the first season. That's the credit, but which led to a really funny thing in the Eekcidental Tourist one, which is the road trip one. There's a running gag in it that the mom would take them to monuments or the Grand Canyon and just make up a fact and just say something.
I remember that. I remember her saying that the Golden Gate Bridge is made out of solid gold.
Yes, yeah. Or that the Washington Monument was like hollow inside and made, but yeah, but that episode begins with the Fox censor reading the script for it and them having to say, ladies and gentlemen, the facts you hear in this are lies. They're not true. Like you can tell Fox told them, you can't tell kids wrong facts about this. This is miseducation. And so their answer to it was, they have a thing in the front that says the jokes in here are lies. These aren't true historical statements, and the writers have been punished. And then you just see self-caricatures of Kopp and Holland about to be executed by the Fox censor.
Oh, that rules. I like that.
I was glad they got away with that. And man, every time I hear him speak in this Eek, he has these references of like, you are such a Gen Xer, like this is the most Gen X thing,
talking about like Hawaii 5-0 and things like that. Again, like I had all this knowledge of the 70s and 60s thanks to like this and Mystery Science Theater and The Simpsons just informing me of all these people's childhoods.
Yeah, and it helped too that their stuff was, a lot of it was being rerun in our childhood, so you could. We said it on our Flintstones podcast too, of just like, this is not a reference to kids anymore because the reruns aren't on all the time anymore. We were the last generation to be flooded with Flintstones reruns. Like, I mean, kids could stream old Flintstones on HBO Max, but why would they? Why would they pick that?
How else are they going to know to hate women and despise their wives?
They need to know that a wife is always trying to steal your money and that they're liars and they never even have dinner ready at the and also this one especially really goes into what Gen Xers love, which was Elvis Presley.
Especially the comeback Elvis, right?
Yes, yeah, because Kopp was born in 1962. By the time he was 10, Elvis was a big fat joke who then made a comeback. And then after watching him make a comeback, they then got to see him die again like that. And I mean, too, like these jokes like about Elvis and growing up with him, you can tell he has a real love for Elvis as trash culture, but also like there are some good Elvis songs.
And I think like Elvis was, regurgitated in pop culture because of the Elvis stamp, right? And that's when I think that's when the term Fat Elvis came into the public consciousness. I mean, he was in bad shape, but when you saw him next to his skinnier self and you could vote between them, the phrase Fat Elvis came up as like a persona of his. And obviously Fat Elvis did not win.
This episode like came out within a year of before the Fat Elvis controversy, so it really prepared me for like, oh, this is why there's jokes about Elvis being fat in things and why people talk about it. When I looked up Elvis too, I was like, holy crap, he died 1977, the same year as the release of Star Wars. 42. He was 42 when he died.
That's insane. And you know what? Standards for fatness have changed. Fat Elvis is just kind of like pudgy Elvis.
Yeah. No, I mean, he's thinner than Donald Trump, I would bet.
He's just puffy from drug use and peanut butter.
Yeah. Well, that's the secret with Elvis too, is that like he used a ton of drugs, but they were all over the counter or they were prescribed drugs, so he thought they were good for him, or at least that was what he's like. Well, I'm not doing cocaine. I'm doing these barbiturates a doctor gave me.
They come in a nice little bottle with my name on it.
And had he not died on a toilet at the age of 42, were he alive, he'd be 85 today, which is a reasonable age to imagine him being. Like, and I think that's too for guys like. So Bill Kopp, was 15 when Elvis died. That also makes him a legend, like if he'd continued to live, he'd have made like crappier music and been more of a joke. And also I think he'd have been a hardcore, I mean, he already was a conservative guy shaking hands with Nixon, but what's Elvis Presley in the Reagan administration like?
God, I love that photo. And also like if he would have survived, think about it, in 2020, we'd be saying like, can you believe Sean Connery and Elvis died in the same year? Sean Connery, 5 years older than Elvis, of course.
Yeah. The Public Enemy, I think, was right about Elvis. Like, he never meant shit to me, but I think there's some good Elvis songs though, but no good Elvis movies, as this episode points out. But because he died in 1977 at such a young age, he was for years afterwards a tabloid superstar of just people saying, I saw Elvis, he faked his death, because people really didn't want to believe that he died on a toilet as just fat ass guy.
Yeah, that was definitely the era of Elvis sightings, was the 80s and early 90s. Like Weekly World News, I think Elvis was on the cover of every issue, and next to Bat Boy. Sorry.
And endless Elvis impersonators everywhere you looked. You cannot get away from Elvis impersonators. Like I think it was a running gag on Full House that
I was thinking of Full House because Elvis was that guy's fucking hero, Uncle Jesse.
Yeah, and then he'd often just do an impersonation of Elvis and hang out with Elvis impersonators. Like it was the plot of that Nick Cage movie, Honeymoon in Vegas, and
the Flying Elvises.
Yeah, there's so many. In 2016 when I covered the Star Trek convention in Las Vegas, I met a Star Trek Elvis impersonator who performed at weddings, and he's like, but he also said he performed gay weddings too. So I was like, all right, good.
Was he like? Did he only exist in the holodeck? Is that what happened?
He didn't have the fiction. Well, he also I think gave himself Spock ears, so he's sort of like a Spock Elvis.
Well, something else about this show that I realized, because I don't see these kind of jokes anymore, and they were like just all over the place in the 90s. There were a lot of we hate fat people jokes.
Yeah.
And I mean, I never thought about it twice because I was always a skinny lad. I was made fun of for being skinny, which probably doesn't hurt as much as jokes in the other direction. But I just don't see these anymore. That's probably for the best, but boy, it's kind of mean-spirited as an adult looking back at these things.
Now when I watch this, I think like, you know what? Eek's right. He doesn't judge his girlfriend by her size at all. He loves her all the same. He doesn't even see it. But yes, no, there's, at least in this episode, it's men and women being mocked for their overweightedness.
That's
not
true,
just
yeah.
Annabelle being a large lady. I mean, too, Annabelle, the character who, that's where we start with the episode. She is totally an old school cartoon character of just the big lady, like, oh, it's a beautiful woman, and then it's like, oh, she is not thin, like that. Many jokes in old cartoons.
Yeah, I feel like in this era there was like, okay, well, who is the character that is fat and eats a lot? So it's like Heifer and Stimpy. There's always like somebody who is just like the big glutton who we can make all of those jokes with them.
I did love Heifer.
Heifer is great. Heifer's amazing. His just perfect orb body with like spindly arms and legs coming out of it.
And that, I mean, and his friends just want to help him too. But yes, we meet Annabelle. She loves Melvis. I wonder if that's partially why she's attracted to Eek, because they are both purple cats.
That's true. That seems pretty rare in this universe.
And I also like that she says, she hears the doorbell, opens the door quickly, and smashes Eek behind the door. She says, "You're playing hide and seek with your love," which I thought for a second, is that an Elvis song reference? But seemingly not. I could not find any song that has that line in it that Elvis did. I also love that Eek says he got her a gift for her birthday last year. Finally, tickets to a Melvis concert. And I also forgot that this takes place on Thanksgiving Day, at least partially, because it's the Thanksgiving Day parade.
That's right. When did this air? Sorry, that's November 28th, 92. So right after Thanksgiving.
Holy crap, this is actually well-timed then.
The Saturday after Thanksgiving in 92. Where were you?
Boy.
At home.
Yeah, I mean, I was definitely begging my mom for a Genesis, I think. That was the year we got a Genesis.
Oh, this was the year I was a month away from getting Super Nintendo. So.
Oh, nice, man. Now we were late to Super Nintendo. You wouldn't think that with what a Mario fanboy I am, but we were late to
the Siren Song of Sonic.
And then we head over to Placeland, a nice vague parody of Graceland.
I like the redundancy of the name, Placeland.
And Graceland is, I'd always imagine going there because that joke on The Simpsons from the softball episode of visiting it, of just like, wow, 2 TVs.
I thought the one where Marge went there and it really opened her mind as to how big hair can be.
Yeah, I thought I had the tallest hair. But Melvis arrives in Placeland, and he is sick of it, guys.
Oh, what does it matter anymore, man? My career is over. My life is ruined. Por favor, Melvis, you gotta give it a little more time. Tomorrow, after you do the Thanksgiving Day parade, we'll re-sign the stinkiest cake food deal. Oh, that's another thing, Colonel. Riding around in that silly blimp every Thanksgiving. It's degrading, man. Now, I realize that I do, and I'll bring that up at the board meeting. I will. They'll have to pay you more. Your career's gonna get a much-needed boost. Career? What career? All I've got to show for my years of hard work is a bunch of cheap, horrible movies that have bombed. I haven't had a hit record in 20 years, and people are starting to say I'm a has-been. Stud? What's that? Nothing, King, nothing. I've had it, man. I want out, Daddy-O. I want my fans to remember me the way I was. I'm gonna disappear. Disappear? Melvis? My mind's made up, Colonel. You can't do it, Melvis. The stinkiest contract. I mean, we'll get more this time. We'll get more. You'll make a comeback, I promise. Oh, why don't you hand that contract over to Wally the bagpipe playing weasel, Colonel? That's enough. That's enough.
Man, okay, a 90s cartoon, so loud.
Yes, yeah.
The sound does not stop.
I mean, I think that's why it's great in the opening to the show is just Eek screaming all the time because you need to know it's going to be a screaming show.
Kopp has a great scream.
That
you'll hear as Melvis as well later.
I like that he took it on himself. He's like, I'm going to write a very screamy show, and I'm going to be the guy doing most of the screaming. And
there are jokes. I mean, it's a long road to the jokes about the Elvis movies, but I never watched an Elvis movie because I just assumed that they were all that.
Yeah.
And maybe Eek informed me of that ahead of time.
I think so too. Yeah. I love that this is barely even about the songs. Like, I definitely get the feeling that Bill Kopp is not that into Elvis music. He is into the terrible Elvis movies, which he made too many of them. I think it's one of those things you never see, like riff tracks or MST3K couldn't touch him because you got to pay like $1 million to license the Elvis songs. Like, Jailhouse Rock might be a terrible movie, but have good luck paying for the right to make fun of it.
And I didn't even know until I looked up. There's an incredible amount of Elvis movies. There's like 20 plus movies.
Yeah, why I could not believe how many there were. And I brought this joke up on the Days of Wine and Dozes Talking Simpsons because they talk about a movie where Elvis is a helicopter pilot, which is, I bet he even gives a speech about like, I don't want to be just a flight attendant anymore. I need to be a helicopter pilot. But in that, his name's like Rick Richards. Like, he has the plainest names in the world for a character who you all know is Elvis Presley. But yeah, this is not about his music. I also was trying to think about the time frame for this, like, when I saw this, Elvis was long dead to me as a 10-year-old. But now I think about, like, he was 15 years dead when this aired in 92.
Wow.
What's 15 years ago now? It's like, oh, yeah, somebody who died in 2005 feels recent to me now.
God. That's like, it's not that close, but like Heath Ledger or someone like that.
Exactly. Honestly, yeah. And then we've got Colonel Pockmark, a parody, very obviously, of Colonel Tom Parker, who I believe was not a real colonel, but was Elvis's like lifelong manager and handler and all that.
And that's where we get Colonel Homer from.
That's right. Yeah, the exact same kind of dumbass hat, I think, is how Homer describes
some dumbass army guy.
And Tom Parker was still alive when this aired. He died in 97. And another fact about Tom Parker I learned is that Tom Hanks is playing him in an upcoming Elvis biopic by Baz Luhrmann, and it was filming that where Tom Hanks got COVID.
No way.
Yes, yeah. So his commitment to playing Colonel Tom Parker is when he got the coronavirus.
If it's a Tom Hanks movie, I bet he's going to make Parker seem like a pretty cool guy.
Totally, and he'll do an okay voice. You're like, I guess that sort of sounds like him. Same with the Mr. Rogers movie where it's like, yeah, I guess that's sort of him. Sure. Yeah, all right. Or when he played Walt Disney, and I was like, I guess that sounds like Walt Disney.
I mean, you just got to grow that little mustache, and that's all you need.
I mean, that's who Tom Hanks, our friends of the show on the Michael and Us show, Will Sloan, he is very correct about Tom Hanks being like, yeah, it's just like the safe choice, and he's like America's just avatar for masculinity still. But yeah, he was in Australia filming the Baz Luhrmann Elvis Presley movie, and that's why when you got the announcement in March that he had COVID, he was like, I'm in Australia, I got COVID.
That signaled like we're in trouble.
That was the day.
Yeah.
That was the day. Yeah. But here, Colonel Pockmark is voiced by Charlie Adler, who's really funny. Like, he's great in this voice of just pleading with him. I love how he says, por favor. And yes, Elvis ate some crazy food, didn't he, Bob?
Yes. I mean, what is he eating in this scene? I don't know if I wrote it down, but like
chili donuts.
Chili donuts that he like puts mustard on. But like real Elvis, he loved fried peanut butter and banana sandwiches.
Peanut butter and banana sandwich. Yeah. No, and different variations on banana sandwiches I found. Same with like a bacon and banana sandwich. There was like bacon wrapped meatballs or biscuits stuffed with meatballs. But the craziest one to me of all his meals is the Fool's Gold Loaf.
Okay, tell me all about this.
It is a hollowed out loaf of French bread.
All right, start with that.
You get a loaf of bread, like full loaf of bread, hollow it out. You put an entire jar of peanut butter into there. An entire jar.
Just one?
An entire jar of grape jelly. A full pound of bacon. and then you fry that motherfucker. And when you pull it out, you eat the entire thing yourself. And the story of him finding out about Fool's Gold loaves was that he then got on his airplane, flew to the restaurant that makes it, and he asked them to make like multiple meals worth of them, and they just loaded it up on the airplane, and him and Colonel Parker and some other friends just chowed down on multiple loaves on their way.
Oh my God.
It's incredible he lived to 42 even.
Yeah. Putting that and all the barbiturates in his body too.
Melvis sadly can't take pills in this kid cartoon. It's just so they just double up on the fat stuff of just every time he speaks he shoves like a giant pizza in his mouth or a burger, or I think the funniest is you can hear it, the handful of M&Ms he just shoves in his mouth, and then he's like saying, "Oh, it's degrading, man." Gargles M&Ms.
We hear soon that he eats 10 pizzas a day. So
yeah, that's probably just his morning thing. So yeah, I also love that he says like people are starting to say I'm a has-been. Starting? What was that? Nothing, King. And yeah, Melvis talking about his secret plan to himself. That is what the Elvis lovers believe, that he faked his death to go into anonymous.
I feel stupid that I never connected that to modern Elvis conspiracy theories. Well, modern as of 1992.
Yeah. I think it was in the early 90s. I watched on Fox a special of like, could Elvis be alive specials? And I just remember I was like, oh, will this have the answer? And then at about the 30-minute mark, they talked to some guy who was like one of Elvis's best friends who also is an impersonator. He's like, no, he's dead. He's dead. I was there.
He and Tupac and Andy Kaufman were sharing an apartment.
It's, in our youth, it was the tail end of the thing of like Hitler's really alive type thing. At Elvis's fictional age of 85 now, we're getting to the point where you're like, well, even if he faked his death 50 years ago, he's certainly dead now.
Plausibly, you cannot live that long in seclusion.
No. And even with Andy Kaufman, it's like, definitely he's dead too. You want to believe. We all want to believe. But that bagpipe playing weasel joke, that also feels like very random 90s, like cheese monkey kind of thing.
Just insert some random adjectives and a kooky animal. You got a joke.
And then when they mentioned the Stinky's cat food, that's when it hit me. This isn't just a parody of Elvis. It's a parody of Morris the Cat.
Oh, you're right. Yeah. Morris, he was bigger in like the 70s, but I think there was still like the fifth Morris was doing commercials at this point in time.
Yeah, I feel like in the 90s they tried, it was when 9 Lives brand of cat food tried their last time to be like, we're getting the new Morris. Who's the new Morris the Cat for this generation? Like Goof Troop had a Morris the Cat episode as well, but it was, to Gen Xers like Bill Kopp, they knew Morris the Cat and his cat food brands very well. So when you take the, fictional mascot of cat food, Morris, put that together with Elvis, you end up with Melvis.
Oh my God. Okay. I feel stupid for not understanding that.
It didn't hit me until today either. Like I was like, oh yeah, this is entirely a Morris the Cat parody.
And Morris the Cat predates Garfield, but they have a similar like surly attitude, right?
Yeah, well that's why those ads worked on me. I bought I.Am's cat food because that's the one Garfield represented. Like when we had cats, at the start it was, well, our dry food's going to be I.Am's, but then it was my mom who bought all the cat food because she really was the one who took care of the cats because I was an irresponsible child who liked having a cat for a little bit and then was like, yeah, I guess I have cats now. Mom will take care of the poop. They were more wet food cats anyway. Wet
food pets.
They like their wet food. My mom indulged a bit much on the wet food, but yes, it then cuts to the parade. Eek is there alone because Annabelle wanted to stay. She's like, I do like that Eek gives her tickets and then he's like, hey, let's go on a date today. Oh no, I couldn't. I gotta go. I gotta get ready for the concert. And they just abandons Eek. Like I don't think they fully write Annabelle as somebody who like uses Eek, but definitely she doesn't think much about his feelings.
She's too starstruck by the idea of seeing Melvis.
Yeah. And then Eek then gets trampled very briefly. I love a good trampling animation. Like whenever he's just a pile of like wet purple stuff, it's just a goopy purple puddle. But that's when he meets two guys making fun of Elvis, which I like that they're drawn to be huge men as well.
They're so fat.
Boy, I can't wait to see Melvis. I don't care what anybody says. I think he's bigger than ever. Of course he is. The guy eats 10 pizzas a day. Hey, this guy is still a Melvis fan.
Don't you know the guy's so fat they're trying to get him to work at SeaWorld? In the whale pool?
How easily people forget. Melvis started it all.
Is the guy talking about SeaWorld, is that Steve Holland?
I think so.
Okay, because I hear that voice a lot on these.
Yeah, he's is Ernie the Elk. That's his most effective voice. But I think the normal voice on Holland is that type of voice, though pitched up a bit. But yeah, it's great that it's two giant men making fun of him. There was when I heard his saying, Elvis started it all. The delivery on that. This is another in the note of I'd like to ask more of Bill Kopp. He sounds like he's doing a Hunter S. Thompson impersonation to me a little bit. The way he goes, you can almost see the watermark, kind of saying like it's I could see Kopp being a Thompson fan. It would
for
fit
sure
with his generation too. Which hey, I like him. He's got some. Definitely the Johnny Depp film was very inspirational to me as a young person who was like, I want to be a cool person who writes words. Now, hey, Johnny Depp sucks. But anyway.
You went to the kind of writing with the least amount of psychedelic drugs.
Right? Yeah. Clearly I'd have been called a nerd by Thompson many times. But yeah, they then cut to Melvis trying to get into the blimp. It's a good little joke about the butter being used to grease him up into there.
Like 2 jokes in a row about him having to like oil up a window to squeeze out of it.
They have to oil him up to get in, and then he brought his own secret butter to oil himself out of the window. But yes, Melvis has plans.
There you go, King. Have a nice flight. Either this blimp is getting smaller every year, or Johnny Blubberbutt Has-Been Rockstar is getting fatter.
Go ahead. Laugh all you want, man. After today, you won't have the king to kick around anymore.
And that's a Nixon reference.
Right. Nixon to kick around anymore, right?
Yeah, when famously when Richard Nixon lost his California governor's race, he said he was retiring from politics, if only. But his last line to the media, the crooked media, was to say, you won't have Richard Nixon to kick around anymore. So it's also funny to put those lines into the Elvis stand-in because Elvis and Nixon, great buddies. What a couple of fans. And I like, too, that the fake standee just constantly repeats, I am the king. I am the king. Another thing that really made this dated in time was hearing him present the Weasel as like an edgy 90s approach to the whole thing, as trying to sell him as the new Stinky's cat food.
He could be like a honeycomb-style demon to sell cereal to kids.
I think, Pockmark's ahead of the curve on the edgy ads. Like, they were just getting started in 92. Like, the response to Sonic is when it really comes together. But yeah, the Stinky's cat food folks are a collection of like empty suits. It was another thing that the Eek show really liked to do, is just like needless boardroom executives.
And I've said it before, but like all of these cartoons growing up trained me to hate executives, and then when I became an adult, I found out they were right.
Yeah, or that they were they were too nice to a degree. But it's great hearing Gary Owens' voice like, we've got to have him for Stinkies. You've got to be kidding. And that's when Castellaneta comes in as the big boss of Stinkies, which it's great hearing Castellaneta. He's just so funny in these voice roles.
I think something happened with like the delivery or something that I got lost in. Was the joke with Mr. Stinky that he's very angry, but he's also agreeable while being angry?
Yeah.
Okay, I wasn't sure if that was the joke.
The joke is he is the classic like, so you like that, do you? Well, I do too. Let's do it. Yes, the guy who you think is turned against you, but he actually is on your side, and he's going to pay you a bunch of money, but he acts mad about it to scare you for some reason. Just these weird head games he plays.
It's always great to hear a young Dan Castellaneta in a fun cartoon like this.
We know what you're up to, Colonel Pockmark. You do?
Our research shows that Melvis the cat is due for a major comeback. The comeback of the century, in fact. But of course, you already knew that, you sly fox, you.
Well, of course I knew that, but hey, how about that Wally the Weasel?
Mr. Stinky, Mr. Stinky.
Join us, Mr. Stinky.
You look great, Mr.
What a
Stinky.
pleasure.
Sit down.
All right, Colonel Pockmark. Let's quit playing games, shall we? I realize we may have treated you and your client Melvis a little unfairly over the years, but that's going to change. Melvis the cat is Stinky's cat food. I'm not going to beat around the bush, Colonel. We want Melvis the cat to re-sign the Stinky's contract, and we are prepared to pay you $50 million for that right.
$50 million? Holy smokes, Melvis the cat just blew up.
God.
I love
that's
that.
perfect timing.
Yeah.
Perfect timing.
He's like, wow, $50 million, kaboom! And I love that they all think he's dead. Like when the standee falls down in tatters in the sky, I do also love that he's just like, I'll pull you back together. He's just agreeable to the end.
I don't know if you have the clip, but I love Eek saying, "Kumbaya, the king is broken into individual pieces."
Yes, actually, I do.
Okay, sorry.
Along with Gary Owens doing an "Oh the Humanity" parody.
Kumbaya, Melvis is in trouble.
This is the worst catastrophe I've ever seen. The Stinky's cat food blimp has burst into flames. Oh, this is terrible. Terrible. It's falling to the ground. Oh, it's terrible.
Come on, Jack, change the card.
Oh, sorry, Clive.
Oh, the humanity. Oh, it's terrible.
I am looking.
Kumbaya, the king is broken into individual pieces. I got you, Elvis. I got you, Melvis.
That he's also so positive that after watching that explosion and seeing like the top of his body floating through the air, he's like, I can pull you back together, sir.
I feel like Gen Xers were the last generation to be exposed to Kumbaya as a song.
Yeah.
There were so many jokes about like, a dork singing Kumbaya, like at campouts or whatever. I never was exposed to the song outside of parody.
Not once. No, I think they all, the Gen Xers, they were all taken on camping trips and were told to sing Kumbaya, and this was their revenge for it. They're like, the same with The Critic had a million Kumbaya jokes. Like these shows, all these creators hated having to sing Kumbaya in the 70s. But yeah, he says it way more than I remember every episode. I think there's like 5. I watched multiple ones. I was like, there's at least 3 Kumbayas per episode.
That's his I Caramba.
Kumbaya. He says it less than Never Hurts to Help, or maybe equally. Also, it just feels, I don't know, the 1937, the "Oh, the Humanity" thing, it's still always shocking to me to hear a parody of that, because I re-listened to the original one. I was like, oh, this is horrible.
That man is truly traumatized by the horror unleashing behind him, unfolding behind him.
I love that he's just apologizing the whole time, too, in it. Like, he's a consummate broadcaster, that guy. But yeah, in this case, Gary Owens' character, as he's crying, he is still on cue cards, even though he's sad about it. But I love that the Colonel, his exact reaction to the explosion was trying to pull it together, because he just got offered the $50 million he wants. And then he gets very lucky, just spots Eek trampled on the ground and picks him up, dusts him off, and says, he survived.
We deeply regret the loss of Melvis, Colonel Pockmark. I'm afraid that since the king has blown into a million unidentifiable pieces, the deal is off.
Well, maybe he survived. I mean, Melvis is a real survivor.
Nothing could have survived that explosion, Colonel. Nothing.
Yeah, well, I guess you're right, but. It's a miracle. He's alive. Melvis is alive. Long live the king. Oh, this is astonishing, people. It's like the rebirth of Melvis the cat. A second start in life. Long live the king.
He's right. Look at this. The crowd actually seems to care about Melvis again. The press will have a heyday with this.
Our offer stands, Colonel. In fact, we'll double it.
It's a deal, gentlemen.
Would you like paper or plastic?
Now, you'll excuse me. I must take the king back to Placeland to recover.
Luckily, they were selling Elvis or Melvis wigs. Yeah. A big greasy wave.
I love that he smashes his head into the wall, in the lamppost one more time to shut him up. But I also just love, God, Gary Owens' delivery. He's like, no one could have survived that. No.
He was a treasure, Gary Owens.
He bought, to think how old he was then, and he could still do stuff like that, or just screaming Powdered Toast Man at the top of his lungs.
Yes, how loud he screams Powdered Toast Man is amazing.
I sometimes I wonder, like, was that elder abuse to make him scream that loud?
I think anyone that was voiced on Ren Stimpy was abused.
That's true. Yes, you're right. Yeah,
including poor Alan Young, who really got into it.
Yeah, he really went for it on that. I mean, it was the style at the time, screaming as loud as you can. Screaming was back in a big way. Yes, he runs off with Eek. We get a quick cut to Melvis. He's now headed up to the Great White North. You could think it's Alaska, but I think you're supposed to view it as Canada.
It's definitely Canada, especially like when he goes to the root beer bar later, and the broadcast they're watching, a very, very Canada bashing stuff, and like the penguin, presumably from Quebec.
The rude French Canadian. The polar bear chasing him. It's a great start that he's like they could maybe have articulated it a little better, but I like that Melvis's arc is like, I don't want to be famous anymore, and then when he finds out that it sucks to not be famous, he's like, I do want to be famous, and he has to accept being chased by a polar bear,
big white doggy.
But yes, Eek wakes up in his new life, and we get a reference to I watched the opening to Hawaii Five-0, the classic one, which that show was on. That show was on for so many years. It was 13 seasons. That show, 67 to 80.
I feel like the new version was just on forever too.
Yes, that show was on forever, and I think it was just because all of these production people were in Hawaii for Lost for a decade, and they're like, can we stay here? All right, new Hawaii Five-0, and we'll just all make this show now.
Good God, this show just ended.
Okay.
10 years of Hawaii Five-0, the new one.
Wow.
240 episodes.
Good Lord, man. Every time I learn about a CBS show, I'm like, that couldn't have been over 200 episodes, and they always are.
That's crazy. I only know Hawaii Five-0 is because whenever there'd be like a wave on Mystery Science Theater, like footage of a wave, they would hum the opening bars of the theme song.
That's right. Yeah, that's how I've never seen 1 minute of Hawaii Five-0, the original, but I know that joke, and it is quite a great tidal wave that they show. Though I don't know if I'd call it a tidal wave. It's just a wave, but anyway, yes. Eek has a proposition.
Huh? Kumbaya. What the heck happened? Why is my hair in a greasy wave the size of the one in the title sequence of Hawaii Five-0?
So you're awake. How do you feel?
Fine, except I can't remember who I am.
Well, I'll tell you who you are. You're a hero, man.
I am?
You saved Melvis the cat's life.
I did. I seem to remember Melvis's blimp exploding and then a lamppost.
That is correct. You pulled Melvis from the wreckage and then hit that lamppost.
Well, gee, where is Melvis? Is he going to be okay?
Well, son, thanks to you, he'll be just fine after he recuperates. You see, he was hurt pretty badly. So badly, in fact, he needs your help.
My help?
Melvis asked me to ask you if you would mind standing in for him while his bits are sewn back together. You bear a striking resemblance to the king, and, well, it would really help him out.
Me? Help the king? Sure, it never hurts to help.
Great.
His bits are sewn back together. Was another thing great. I wrote down there. Yeah. Very, very funny.
And I just love, again, gullible, trusting Eek. He's like, no, he's not dead. He's far away. And Charlie Adler's so great playing the Colonel, just making up a plot on the spot.
He needs to recuperate.
All the made-up words. I also love hearing the Colonel say, like, por favor, Melvis. And that Eek on top of this, he could ask for money. He could ask for so many things. He's just like, sure, I'll just live another life as somebody else. Yeah, it's easy.
He is so agreeable.
And as they're walking around through Placeland, I again was shocked with some of the stuff they got away with in the backgrounds. Like, first off, the copyright breaking Melvis versus Mothra one.
Oh, yeah. And also, Melvis passes a stone.
That's shocking they got away with that one. That had to be a censor didn't know what that phrase meant. But there's also a really weird cut where this must have been the commercial break but like the Colonel picks up a sandwich and Eek's like, oh boy, I feel like there's supposed to be a joke where he shoves the sandwich in Eek's mouth or something, but it just stops.
Maybe the joke came back all messed up animation wise and they couldn't do a retake. So just like, we'll just stop it there.
That's true. Sometimes I credit some things to a censor and then it's like, nah, it probably could have just looked like shit and they cut around it. Like when the explosion happens in the blimp, there's a real like big After Effects-y video thing of just like flashes of neon lights, which I feel like that's just fixing like this anime. This explosion looked bad in the overseas
It was
stuff.
a real like video effecty kind of shot.
But then comes the joke that has rung in my ears ever since. I don't know why it is that as a kid my favorite jokes were repetition jokes, but this one really made me. It's my favorite joke that I remember from Eek.
It's great. I love how even Eek can't be like on board the entire time for this. As plucky as he is, he eventually this gets to him.
It's meltingly bad for Eek, yes, but Eek at first is very excited to watch every Elvis movie ever made.
Gosh, what a treat. I get to watch every Elvis movie ever made.
I don't want to be just another Joe working in a pit stop, Sue Ellen. I'm going to risk it all and be a driver.
Oh, Melvis.
We're going to win that race. We're going to take first place. I'm going to win for my mama because she gave me this face.
I don't want to be another schmo sweeping up the hangar, Betty Sue. I'm going to risk it all and become an astronaut.
Oh, Melvis.
We're gonna go in space, I gotta see that place. I said to dial for Mars, cause we gotta make haste.
I don't want to be just another stiff walking around an amusement park in a stuffed badger costume, Noel Cinder. I'm gonna risk it all and go for that parking lot attendant gig.
Oh, Melvis.
I'm going to park those cars, I gotta reach for the stars. You got my head spinning round like a frog in a blender. We're gonna pull those claws, we don't have time to pause. Gonna scale me a mermaid and party with Jaws.
Party with
They
Jaws.
must be those clowns from Stinky's Cat Food. This is it.
And then he staples the wig to his head.
God.
Yeah, that is very funny. And then it really makes fun of how bad some of Elvis's music. I'm not an Elvis fan, by the way, but when they later see him in concert, his song is just one of these. I'm going to do this thing. I'm going to do that thing.
Yes, yeah. I like the song "Suspicious Minds."
The best Elvis songs are the ones he stole from black people.
Yes, very much so. Yeah, I mean, and also like the best Elvis movie. The only one people agree is like a good movie is Viva Las Vegas.
Yeah.
And that's mainly thanks to Anne Margaret, people say.
Oh, boy. And Marg Rock, more like it.
I didn't know, there's Blue Hawaii and Roustabout. I've heard those are okay ones. But I think pretty much if you watch Viva Las Vegas and then watch any other Elvis movie, you're like, these are just copies of that one that is made worse in every way. And they always are just like a guy who's clearly Elvis, but you're like, no, he's a guy who works for the carnival or whatever. Like, that's the movie Roustabout, is a guy who he starts as a carnival worker.
So that is a real parody of aspiring to be a parking lot attendant.
And also the names of all of his girlfriends are great too. Like,
Sue Ellen.
Yeah, and I think that's the only appearance of E.G. Daly in this episode, is that she's the Melvis girls. But yeah, there's just something about it, the way it hit every time, and that it was a joke about how every Elvis movie is the exact same movie. Something about it just made me laugh uproariously, and it still gets me. And then they got away with saying frog in a blender on a cartoon in the morning. Yeah, I can't believe that either. And a funny drawing of him melting, of Eek just melting from the badness of all these movies. I like that the Colonel, he could have abandoned Eek to be like, you watch these by yourself, I've seen them. But instead, he's loving it. He's just watching every movie happily.
And this really doesn't help him in his Melvis training.
No,
ultimately.
Yeah. You're right. It's just he's actually a very bad Melvis impersonator, Eek is, other than looking like him. But yeah, again, you mentioned the wig stapling. I also couldn't believe they got away with that on Fox Kids. Like that little Timmy is going to imitate that on his older brother.
That's what's that called, an attractive nuisance.
Yeah. And this is when they cut to Melvis getting to the watering hole, the root beer bar. That's how they get away with that. And I love that the polar bear is trapped on the door for the whole time he's there, and when he leaves, the polar bear is still right there.
And I love the penguin Dan Castellaneta is like, you annoying obese man.
And also I was questioning the reality of like, Well, okay, wait. This is a place full of elk, and there's a stuffed moose head on the wall like that. It's more loaded than originally. But yes, no one in Canada cares about Elvis.
Pardon me there, Crocodile. I wonder if I can get something warm to drink.
You are an annoying and obese man. I will get to you when I have the time.
That little fella treated me as rudely as he'd treat any cat.
Okay, sorry that the elk report was like a little long today, but so like, don't anybody go out, because we now return to tonight's movie already in progress, Clam Bake Calamity, starring Melvis the cat, eh?
Turn the channel. I hate this fat jiggle-butt has-been with a pompous greasy hairdo.
That guy's a loser.
He's funny. I never liked him.
Styling for elves! Styling for elves! Styling for elves! Styling for elves!
The answer is June through September, eh?
What is the antler molting season for the North Arctic elk?
What is the antler molting season for the North Arctic elk?
And I have the scene open on YouTube as we're doing this, and I feel like they were told you must say this is root beer, so there are just like root beer signs everywhere in the scene.
I missed that.
And all of their drinks are just look like water.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's
To get away with a scene in a bar in like 1992 at 9:30 a.m. or whatever.
You know that other Canadian cartoon, the Royal Canadian Kilted Yaxman, they had to have a big like root beer written on it too. I also love like the Cam Clark and Dan, they both do Canadian voices. I think Cam Clark's is more like over the top, and then we're sorry we had to go out early. Meanwhile Dan's a little more toned down, but it's in both cases it's Americans mocking Canadians and how they talk.
Not all Canadians.
And I also like that the Melvis is actually in hell. He doesn't realize he should have gone maybe south of the border or something. Don't hide out in Canada. But I guess nobody gives a shit about Melvis there, so he can hang out safely. Then we cut to Eek at the Stinky's cat food commercial, which I love his little song here.
Stinky's cat food's real neat. It's what we kiddies like to eat.
Shabop, shabop, shabop.
Use your paws or use your feet to stuff your mouth with fish and meat. So give your cat the special treat. Stinky's, it's so sweet. Stinky's cat food can't be beat.
Yeah.
I also like the cat food is named after the man who owns the company.
Yeah.
It's not that the cat food is Stinky. The guy's name is Mr. Stinky.
You're right. That's great. It's like Carvel or whatever. Just the guy's like, it's named after me, but your name's Stinky, and that no one buys Stinky cat food. I don't care. It's my company. Yeah, I love too in the background. Another good joke I caught was like, what's in the cat food? Bugs and potash.
Oh, okay.
Is advertised.
I didn't see that at all.
I missed that one until the third watch, but yeah, and I also like that it's obvious Eek is not him. He's not singing a song the way Melvis would. He's actually a terrible singer. The cartoon way they get around it is that the insane man who runs the company is like, this is wonderful. He's a chameleon. He changed his music. And then all his yes men just have to fall in line. I love that. Like, it's terrible that you people can't see real talent when it's under your nose. And then there's a long montage of Eek enjoying the Melvis lifestyle. He drives up to a film premiere in his the Elvis style pink Cadillac, and I like that every one of these scenes is ended with Eek being torn apart by his fans.
I enjoyed the David Letterman bit with Paul Schaefer as a monkey on his head, and Larry Bud Melman next to him on the couch laughing at him.
When I saw that, I was like, it's a joke that makes total sense in 1992, but to kids now it would make absolutely no sense because there's no even like sound to it, and also like
making his tie move. I love that.
Doing the tie move dance. I feel like it's meanest to Schaefer that he's like, oh, he's a screaming monkey. That's what Paul Schaefer is. And Bud Melman, I just knew him as a funny name, Bud Melman.
Calvert DeForest, the guy's real name. Actually, when they moved to CBS, they couldn't use Larry Bud Melman because that's a character owned by NBC.
Oh, wow.
So he had to appear as Calvert DeForest.
I mean, that's a funny, great bad name too. And there's another gag, the running gag of him being trampled by crowds of people. When he goes to Japan, it's Godzilla who is held up by his adoring fans, not Melvis. And now I know enough about Japanese to know that all of the signs are gibberish in the background. And
get some nice like do 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 music too.
Yeah, that's how.
Just to let you know, you're in Japan.
How would I know if I didn't hear that sound? And then we get a bunch of spinning newspaper jokes. It ends with a great gag of the final spinning newspaper is thrown at Melvis himself. Like, that's great. And that's when Melvis realizes nobody misses him. Then it cuts to the Colonel. He's raking in sacks fulls of cash. I like the design on the $10 bill. Just says $10 on it.
Who is on that $10 bill?
I can't
It feels like an inside joke or something.
You're right. I bet it is.
It's like a person's face. I don't even know if it's a celebrity's face.
Yeah, it's got to be one of their buddies. But this is when we get another of the running jokes in Eek's life.
Not a bad deal, this fame thing, eh, Eek?
Not to be Mr. Big Hurry, Colonel, but when is Melvis the cat gonna get better?
Well, I just got a call from the hospital, and, well, he choked on a piece of pudding and damaged his throat. He'll have to remain in the hospital just a little itty-bitty bit longer.
Gee, how much longer?
Oh, just maybe another 6 years or so.
6 years? Gee, I hope he's gonna be okay. He's so much better at this than I am.
Oh, you'll get used to it. You'll probably really get to like being mauled by crowds of out-of-control fans. The backstabbing, the fair weather friends, the sycophants who just want a piece of the action.
But I miss my family and my girlfriend, Annabelle.
Yeah.
Well, gee, she's really fat.
Really?
He shows her a picture. He shows him a picture, and then when Annabelle's called fat, he turns the picture back around and looks at it like, "Really?"
He just doesn't. He doesn't see it, and that makes Eek the good guy here.
Yeah, Colonel Pockmark can't even come up with like another euphemism, like, "Oh, she's different" or "She's interesting."
That is the great joke construction of the running gag, because the way he pauses there, that's in real life when people see somebody who is overweight and they want to be polite and not commenting on it. They go like, "Oh, she's really special," but it becomes a joke when he's like, "Really fat." And then to follow that up with, "Really? Really?" Just, I mean, the way Eek sounds, and the same with he sounds like such a dweeb when he's like, "Not to be Mr. Big Hurry, Colonel." Like, just to make up, like, "Not to be Mr. Big Hurry. I know I've given up months of my life to do this, but do you think it could end at some point?"
He's such a sweet boy.
And then we get a great pitch from the Colonel of like, "No, don't you want to be famous?" Like, I also feel like they got away with something of like, "Islands full of misguided, shallow women."
And then the Colonel gets so excited he starts licking the window.
I know, he's really excited just at the thought of that islands filled with women,
shallow women.
I have a feeling that's perhaps Kopp and Holland reflecting on a decade of working in Hollywood and then what their dating pool was. And I also love that Eek is shown all this stuff like, here's money, fame, women, everything you could have, and Eek is just such a nice little guy that he's like, "I miss my family and my girlfriend. I gotta get out of here." He doesn't even want it.
The idea of damaging her throat on a quote-unquote piece of pudding,
yes.
is also a very fun line.
It's such a terrible excuse, but Eek is the most trusting fool in the world, so he's like, "Oh yeah, okay, that makes sense. Wow, 6 years. Well, I hope he hurries up." Like, he just call Colonel a liar, be like, "That doesn't sound believable," but Eek trusts him implicitly. And I also love how he describes the tickets he got. Is like, they're way up in the lows behind a pole, but they're a swell deal.
That leads to a very funny joke later that I laughed out loud at.
Yeah. And also as Eek's leaving, there's some great animation on the Colonel like running on his knees to beg, like, "No, please don't go." Then we cut back, and I'm really glad the Inuit comedy was light here with the guy talking to Melvis.
I'm glad they gave him an offensive Canadian accent.
Yes, yeah. Oh man, am I glad they did that. And you know, there is a lengthy scene in the Fargo movie that is this exact like Minnesotan accents and Canadian accents, not too dissimilar.
Oh, they're like kissing cousins, those accents.
But yeah, this speech I just love. Charlie Adler does an amazing job.
So Sparky's fell through the ice, and since he was the last dog in line, no one noticed. I tell you so. We're dragging Sparky in this block of ice, and no one noticed. And I'm saying to the wife, you know, like, where's Sparky's distinctive barking? And then we like notice he's like in a big ice cube, eh?
Think his cat puts real need, it's what we kiddies likes to eat.
Shoobop, 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 shoobop.
Use your paws or use your feet.
Hey, man, turn the channel. I can't stand watching this tone-deaf phony.
Shoobop, shoobop, stuff your face with fish and meat.
The king. I have always loved him.
He's such an innovator. I love his new sound, eh?
Are you Ice Cube heads nuts? That's not Melvis. I'm Melvis, you fools.
Sure you're a pal. And like, I'm Milky Summer, eh?
That's it. I'm getting out of here. I'll miss the mobs, the fame, the islands full of misguided shallow women. Melvis is a-coming home.
And the bear's still outside. Who is Matthew Summer?
I don't know.
He's like, and I'm Matthew Summer, eh?
Oh, wait, I think he says Elkie Summer.
Elkie Summer?
Which
okay.
That is a real person. I looked her up.
Oh, okay. I heard Matthew, and I was looking it up.
Here, let me play it real quick here.
Okay.
One more time.
Sure you're a pal. And like, I'm Milky Summer, eh?
It's Elkie Summer, yeah. Okay, German actress Elkie Summer.
Yeah, who was in Shot in the Dark with, and she was quite a babe of the 60s. Yeah, and apparently at the time when this, and she's still with us. Apparently, at the time when this aired, she was in a scandalous feud with Zsa Zsa Gabor.
Oh.
Okay.
Yeah, obviously chosen because her name is Elkie, and that's an elk.
But that also does fit with the Gen X, stars, like somebody they would have heard of. But yeah, I think too, it's again another comment on Canada that they're like, this terrible song by Eek singing that the Canadians have bad taste and enjoy it. Even the French Canadian are like, I have always loved him. And but yeah, Adler's whole speech are like, and I never noticed, and then they didn't notice
his distinctive bark,
and the way he just keeps saying, and no one noticed, like over and over, it's like, we know the plot, the story you're trying to tell. To quit repeating, no one noticed.
He's also playing it a bit drunk, which I like.
Yeah. You're right. Yeah, it is a drunk guy kind of story. And so, yes, Melvis leaves, seemingly being eaten by the polar bear again. Though that then comes back when he returns in the next scene. He's hired the polar bear as staff. And so it's concert night. Definitely an overseas goof 'em up on that poster of One Night Only for Melvis. Like, every color's wrong on it.
Yeah. I was like, what the hell is happening here? Is that like a gag? But no, like there was like a color issue where he looks like Pavarotti or something. Something's happening.
He has like orange. His fur is orange. Everything's wrong on it. But I think it's one of those things you can't do a retake on. And had this been just a few years later in digital, they could have, even though the show looks a little digitally.
Yeah,
for
I'm not sure what's happening, or if they're cells or not. I mean, with the quality on YouTube, it's really hard to tell.
Yeah. Actually, I bet I'll have a quick answer if I were to search on eBay for Eek the Cat cells and see if there is one.
The intro definitely looks digital to me, but I'm not sure about the rest of the show. I'm seeing cells.
Okay.
I'm seeing cells.
All right, then yeah, it was it must have been at least it seems very digitally effecty after the fact, though. Like more effective than, say, Tick was at the same time on the channel. But okay, so yeah.
And I bet it's a buyer's market for Eek cells right now.
There's, if you have a friend who loves the Ghostbusters and $50, you can get a pretty good cells of real Ghostbusters for that much. Now a Simpson cell, you're paying a bit more, but this is the one bit where I feel like the ending could have amounted to a bit more. It feels a little rushed.
Yeah, it just kind of fades out. There's no like big gag it ends on.
Well, and it's not like Eek has to make a big decision. It's just Melvis comes back and says, no, you don't need to do it. And that's it.
It could have ended like on a gag, like of Eek getting hurt or something. It just kind of like
and also,
the air comes out of the episode.
There's nothing final for the Colonel. Like the Colonel, who throughout all of this, as far as he knows, Melvis is dead and he's profiting off of his corpse. Like, there should be a scene where the real Melvis comes back and meets with the Colonel again. And he's like, oh, so you replaced me with this guy. Oh, King, I'm so sorry. You're fired. I hired this polar bear.
That's why I think they got better at writing the show when it was a shorter episode, because they don't have to worry as much about storytelling. It could just be like a bunch of blackout gags based around around a theme.
When you've been with a plot for an entire half hour, you expect more resolution than in a 7 or 11 minute thing. But yeah, as Eek is about to put on the wig as if it's a crown and do it one more time and miss his date with Annabelle, Melvis is back, baby.
Give me a chili donut, man. Thanks, man.
Melvis!
That's right, baby. The king is back.
Thank goodness. I'll tell you, King, I have a whole new respect for you. This fame thing sure is a lot of hard work.
It sure is, kid. This kind of life's not for the meek.
That's Eek, sir.
Whatever. I owe you a debt of gratitude, son. If I can ever return the favor, let me know, man.
Well, actually, if you really don't mind, I wonder if I could ask for one small favor, Melvis.
Just name it, man.
I like that Eek just wants one small favor. It's like, how about you ask for $1 million since you were him during $100 million ad campaign?
His favor like amounts to nothing. I like how bad it is actually based on where they're sitting.
Yeah, he should at least say it, and that's why it's a great joke. Melvis should say, okay, you're in the front row seats now. I got much better tickets for you guys. Anything else instead of just like, okay, I'm going to point, I'll shout out to you and spotlight you during the concert, and that's it. And, of course, though, it doesn't work out in the end.
Hi, Annabelle.
Oh, hey, I was afraid you were held up. Now, shush, the king is just about to take the stage.
I'd like to dedicate my first song to a very dear friend, a cool cat with a big heart, my friend Eek the cat.
You're such a hey-man. You're friends with Elvis.
We're gonna dance in slush, give a sled dog mush. We're gonna head up to the yard and get a polar bear rush. We're going south, all the way south, baby. That's the coolest. Get your dogs, man.
So yeah, the gag is like Annabelle and Eek are sitting behind a giant pole, and then when he dedicates the song to Eek, the spotlight hits the pole. You don't even see them. I laughed really loud at that.
Yeah, and then Eek's waving to the audience like, "Oh, I'm famous now." It's like no one can see you. You're not. And then they're just both so happy. They don't feel bad that they can't even see the concert. They have the worst seats in the house. Like all meaningless to Eek. He's just happy to be there because he's an agreeable dope. Like and that song, I guess that song is the one Melvis wrote about riding his polar bear south back into America.
I wish there was more to it, but that's what the episode goes out on.
Yeah, this they didn't have it in the budget for a big musical sequence, let's say that. But other than all of his like, space and
it feels like the budget is so low that like the voice actor just sang a song off the top of his head and then they put music to it after the fact because the singing doesn't really match the music that closely.
Yeah, though I do like a really good Elvis pose on his like point up, handkerchief in his right hand with the mic going, "My friend Eek." Like
I forgot, good. Was there like karate chop stuff with Melvis in this one or no?
I don't think he does any karate. No, I don't think so. That's a miss there. It should have been hey, how? That's part of the Elvis act is doing the karate chops.
So before we get to our final thoughts, I wanted to add a correction because I know everyone already commented. So go delete your comments.
Yes, please.
Because I noticed that looking for Eek merchandise, so there along with the Terrible Thunder Lizards kids meal toys at Hardee's, there was Eek, and Eek also had in '96 there were KFC toys, and there was an Eek plush. And I really want one, but they probably all reek of cigarettes now.
I mean, they all stink, like, or kid drool. Like, they got drooled on by kids for a decade.
Just breathe that Clinton air in. Just sniff the fur.
Boy, it really sounds like Eek was like, well, okay, you can't have Batman. Well, Eek, I guess? We'll take Eek. Okay, sure. But that, I mean, also I like that it's fitting for Eek to have the C-level kids meals. That's what he was offered in. I think that was a really good episode of Eek. There's maybe better ones, but I just love the Elvis jokes so much. And then also hearing Kopp not just doing great Eek stuff, but also he's Melvis, so he's doing a great Elvis impersonation too, as we also got to hear live in that interview.
It was so much fun to go back to the Fox Kids era. I like we said earlier, like we grew up with this. Like it was just fun to see this new contender in the field of Saturday Saturday morning cartoons, as all of animation was changing and getting better, stuff like this was emerging. And, it's a bit rough. It's not as to the level of like Rocko's Modern Life or Ren and Stimpy or those other edgy cartoons, but I like what they're doing here, and I wish it was more available because, frankly, the quality is awful on YouTube. It could be a lot worse. It could be a Space Monkeys or Mighty Max situation, but it's not all available, and it should be somewhere.
Yeah, I at the very least take advantage of most of it just being on YouTube straight up, like, and enjoy the trip back to the early 90s of like, wow, an American Gladiators joke that when it was new. That's crazy.
And all these movie parodies of movies kids should never have watched.
There was an extended and very specific Pulp Fiction one that I couldn't believe they did.
I'm pretty sure there is an Apocalypse Now one as well.
Oh, for sure.
Just like the Animaniacs. Everyone had to do one in their 90s kids cartoon.
The Pulp Fiction one even starts with the opening of a trunk, which is like one of the most famous shots in honestly most Tarantino films. But yeah, so seek out Eek.
Mm-hmm. So thank you so much for listening to our show. If you want to get all these episodes 1 week ahead of time and ad-free, please go to patreon.com/TalkingSimpsons. Sign up there for $5. You get just that, but also access to everything behind the $5 paywall. That includes all of our limited miniseries, the most recent of which was Talking Futurama Season 2, Part 2. That was 9 new episodes of Talking Futurama. And we will have our first 2021 miniseries coming up very soon, and who knows what that'll be, but you'll get to vote on it if you're part of the Patreon at patreon.com/TalkingSimpsons. Simpsons. If you sign up there, you'll get everything we've done for nearly the past 4 years of the Patreon, over 100 bonus episodes. So much to dig into there. You'll have a lot of fun checking out the past podcasts we've done. But if you sign up for $10, you get all the $5 stuff, plus also access to one mega long podcast once a month, just for patrons of that level or higher.
Yes, Bob's talking about the What a Cartoon movie podcast, where we cover animated films in the same way we do animated series, often for twice or even 3 times as long as a regular What a Cartoon podcast. Well, this is so far in advance for recording, I don't know what the most recent ones were, but some great ones you've heard were The End of Evangelion, Wallace and Gromit, Curse of the Were-Rabbit, and Scooby-Doo on Zombie Island. Quite a collection of over 120 hours of podcasts that you get in addition to all of the $5 stuff if you're a $10 and up subscriber at patreon.com/TalkingSimpsons.
So I've been one of your hosts, Bob Mackey. You can find me on Twitter as Bob Servo. And my other podcast, by the way, is Retronauts. It's a classic gaming podcast all about old video games. Find that wherever you find podcasts, or go to patreon.com/Retronauts and sign up there for 2 bonus podcasts every month. Again, that is patreon.com/Retronauts. Henry, what about you?
Hey, follow me, Henry Gilbert, on Twitter at HENEREYG. Anytime new stuff goes live, I tweet about it. And the same is true for our official podcast Twitter account at Talk Simpsons Pod. At Talk Simpsons Pod has all the news when new podcasts go live for What a Cartoon, or our sister podcast, Talking Simpsons, or any of our exclusive stuff that's on Patreon. You are up to date if you follow at Talk Simpsons Pod on Twitter.
Thank you so much for listening, folks. We'll see you next time for the Batman Beyond episode, Out of the Past, and we'll see you then.
The stinkiest people on Melvis. Melvis the cat.
After tomorrow, there won't be any more Melvis the Cat Man.